Hello friends, welcome to your YouTube channel. In this video, I'll be giving you important questions for this year's mains examination, General Studies Paper 3, Economy section. So guys, if we analyze the last 1 year current affairs, we can easily find out some of the very probable questions which we need to prepare for this year's mains examination, which are very highly probable to come in the mains examination. Guys, the first question I have framed from the very first topic, which is growth and development in the syllabus. So question goes like this: differentiate between growth and development, and can India become a developed country in 2047? Guys, this is a very important question, very highly probable this year, particularly the concept of development. Okay, what is the definition of development? Okay, exactly what is the definition of development? This you should know. And when can a country be called a developed country? Is there any parameter for that? You should know this. Okay, this can come in the mains examination. The next question is also related to that. Okay, why is GDP not an accurate measure of development? Suggest other methods of measurement. Because generally, whenever we talk about development, we restrict ourselves to GDP. However, we know that economic growth is not sufficient for development. Okay, there are other things also which includes in development. Okay, so because GDP is just a quantitative value, whereas development is a basically qualitative. Okay, development is a qualitative concept. Okay, next is related to the same theme, HDI, because for the first time in the last couple of years, okay, HDI scores have declined. HDI scores have declined, so they can ask you assess India's progress in HDI. Okay, next is the dynamics between growth and inflation. What is the trade-off between growth and inflation, and how big is the challenge for the RBI? Guys, inflation is becoming a very big challenge for not just RBI but throughout the central banks of the world. Okay, so question related to inflation has a high probability of appearing in this year's mains examination. Next, they can ask you the concept of stagflation. They can ask you, is India in stagflation? What are the chances India may end up in stagflation? And why is stagflation considered a dangerous situation for any economy? Okay. Next is the topic of employment. They can ask you employment elasticity, and they can link this employment elasticity to the problem of unemployment in India. Next is the topic of gig economy. Guys, recently Niti Aayog has come out with a report in which it has said that the percentage of the gig workers in the economy is going to increase to at least 4 to 5% of the entire workforce. This is a huge number. So what are the various issues related to the gig economy in India? Next is the topic of development finance. Guys, last year, I think around October or November, government has come out with development finance institution, because previously what used to happen that most of the infrastructure financing were done by the banks, and we all know that infrastructure financing are like long-term financing which may result into high NPAs in the banks. So government has now decided to come out with a dedicated infrastructure financing, okay, which is development finance institution. Okay, so this is a very important topic. Okay, and question can come that will it be able to basically fill the infrastructure gap, and why in the past these institutions which were created have failed? Why development institutions in the past have failed? Okay, they can ask you this. Then they can ask you the topic of asset monetization, because asset monetization they can link it to the resource mobilization. Resource mobilization. Okay, resource mobilization. Okay. Next is the concept of GDP GVA. Next is the concept of MSME, and they can ask MSME how MSME is linked to the concept of inclusive growth. So they can link two different parts of the syllabus together. UPSC is very fond of doing this. Okay, so they will try to link MSME with inclusive growth, and they will ask you what are the challenges faced by MSME, because in the last 2 years, because of the COVID pandemic, MSMEs are facing the brunt. Okay, so this is a very important topic. Next is the topic of unicorn startup. They can ask you the startup policy, the startup ecosystem, very important topic. Next is the topic of energy intensity in GDP. Analyze various measures to reduce energy intensity, because energy intensity is not just related to energy security, it is also related to environment sustainability. Because if your energy intensity is high, this means you are producing a lot of greenhouse gases. Okay, so how to reduce this energy intensity is a very big concern, not just for the energy security but also for the environment sustainability. Okay, next is the topic of cooperatives, very important. For the last 2 years this theme of cooperatives is going on. Government has come out with a ministry of cooperatives. A lot of noises we are hearing in the field of cooperatives. So either cooperatives can come in essay, either cooperatives can come in general studies paper 1, or it can come in general studies paper 3, but it will come this year. Okay, take it from me, one question on cooperative will come this year, either from GS paper 1, where it will come in the post independence India, or it can come in GS paper 3, or it can come in essay. Okay guys, very important. Next topic, if you see, is about nutri cereals. Next topic is on FDI. Then next topic, okay, we have the impact of 1991 economic reforms, particularly on inclusive growth. Then what is the impact of rising forex exchange on Indian economy? Next is the topic of agriculture infrastructure development. Is an important topic. Okay, these two topics are not that important. These two important topics are not that important, but I have listed down them. But this topic of agriculture infrastructure development is very important. Okay, next, the concept of exports. Can export become the vehicle of economic growth in India? Examine the challenges in export growth in India. Next, again, I have given you a question on currency depreciation, appreciation, because this has been in news. Indian currency has depreciated and has crossed the 80 barrier. So in that context, currency depreciation can be a point of question. Okay, next is the tax to GDP ratio. Why is overall tax to GDP ratio in India relatively low than compared to other developed countries or OECD countries, and how can we improve the tax to GDP ratio? Okay, next is the topic of basically technology mission. UPSC has not asked questions till now, so I am predicting this today, that very high chance that UPSC will ask question on technology mission this year, and they will link technology mission to the shortage in pulses and oilseed in India and need to become self-sufficient in these two crops. Very important, I must say, very important. If you have not prepared this, please read this. Okay, next is the topic of backward and forward linkage in food processing sector. Next is the topic of FPOs. Next is the topic of central bank digital currency. Do we really need them? What are they? Do we really need them? Next is the topic of security threats posed by cyber cryptocurrencies. Cryptocurrencies are in news. So how are cryptocurrencies different from digital currencies? They can ask you a comparison also. So these two topics are linked. However, there is a huge difference between a central bank digital currency and a cryptocurrency. Next is the topic of increasing inequality and economic growth after 1991. See, many have argued that inequality has increased because of the neoliberal economic policy which we adopted in the year 1991. Is it really true? If yes, then what were the factors responsible for that? Next is the topic of logistics, and they will try to ask you to link logistics with the Gati Shakti program. Guys, in India, logistic costs is one of the highest in the world. It's around 14% of the GDP, whereas in America it is just 8%. So because of this logistic cost, the profitability of Indian companies or the competitiveness of Indian companies are very low compared to other countries, and that is why our goods are not able to do well in the export markets. Okay. Next is, can we legalize MSP? Will it solve the problem of the farmers? Next, what are freebies? Are they really free? How do they burden the state finance? Explain in the context of FRBM Act. So basically freebies are in news in the last couple of months. So they can link freebies with the state budget or budgeting, and they can ask you, okay, what are the fiscal implications of freebies? Okay. Next is the topic of discoms. Discoms are also in news for wrong reasons. Now the government has come out with Electricity Amendment Bill 2022, which will reform the discom sector. So this is also a very important question. Next is the question of falling labor participation rate in India. What are the responsible factors for that? Next is the topic of strategic disinvestment, and how will this new policy on PSUs help the PSU sector and the Indian economy in general. Next is the topic of depleting groundwater, and how depleting groundwater is because of the shift in cropping pattern. See, we have shifted our cropping pattern from core cereals to water intensive sector in crops, and because of this shift, there has been depletion of groundwater in India. Last two questions, which is again the most important, I am again predicting that at least one of them will pakka come in the exam. This is from the topic of livestock or animal rearing. Okay guys, so this year we are holding the World Dairy Summit. So in that context they can ask you question on dairy sector, what is their significance and achievement, and why dairy sector is in crisis today. What are the various challenges faced by the dairy sector. Next is the question on livestock linked to the previous question. Livestock can be a vehicle of inclusive development in India. So here you see I have tried to link livestock with inclusive growth. I have tried to link livestock with inclusive growth. Explain. So these were the issues which you need to prepare. Let me sum up. What are the very important questions which have a very high probability to come in this year's mains examination, General Studies Paper 3 economy sections. One will be the concept of growth and development, how they are different from each other. What are the measures to measure growth? We have GDP. For development we have HDI. And can India become a developed economy, developed country by the year 2047? This can be a very probable question. Next will be the problem of stagflation and linking inflation and growth. Next will be the topic of employment, unemployment crisis, very high crisis is there, and we can link this concept of employment elasticity. Next is the concept of basically gig economy. Gig economy is in news for various reasons. If it is properly regulated, then it will create a lot of jobs for Indian youth. So gig economy is a very important aspect, but there are issues related to social security in gig economy. Next is the topic of development finance institutions. Next is the topic of asset monetization, how it is different from privatization. Next is GDP versus GBA. Next is MSME versus inclusive growth. Next, unicorn is also very important. Next, 1991 economic reforms. Next, this tax to GDP ratio, very high probability. Tax to GDP ratio, why India's tax to GDP ratio is low, very high probability. Next will be the topic of central bank digital currency, very important I must say. Central bank digital currency, very important I must say. Next will be the Gati Shakti. Next will be the freebies, and are they really free? They will ask you to link it to the FRBM Act. Next will be the topic of legalizing of MSP. What are the various concerns? Next, the discom sector, energy sector questions can come. Last but not the least is the dairy sector and the livestock sector. Groundwater is also probable, but last year they have already asked on micro irrigation, so might not come also, but groundwater and cropping pattern, very high probability to appear in the exam. So Guys, please go through these questions. I wish you all the best for the mains examination. After the mains examination is over, okay, I would like to know from you, okay, how far my predictions helped you, and we will try to analyze the paper also. Thank you, my friends. Bye bye. Take care.